Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Queerpreneur podcast with me, your host, Sarah Taylor. And today we're talking about a really, really important topic. We are talking about mental health, particular challenges and struggles in the LGBTQ plus community. And I'm joined by Kate Webb. So Kate.
Hi,
Kate.
hello. Thanks for having me, Sarah.
Oh, my pleasure. Kate is the Deputy CEO of MindOut. MindOut is an incredible LGBTQ plus charity, mental health charity in Brighton. And I am also a proud trustee, or very proud to be a trustee for MindOut. And yeah, what I really want you all listening to take away from today's podcast episode is a greater understanding, a deeper understanding of the mental health struggles for the LGBTQ plus community, people in that community. And more than that, I think I'd really love it if you were able to reflect on and think about, and hopefully Kate's going to help us with that too today. What action can you take? You know, how can you either support people who are struggling with their mental health, or if you are in the LGBTQ plus community yourself and you're listening and you are having your own mental health challenges, and I think we're probably all having mental health challenges.
Yeah.
At this time, we are still in 2020, it's October, we are in the middle of this global pandemic which continues, and yeah, challenging time for everybody, let alone, you know, never mind who you are really. So Kate, thank you so much for being here. It's really great to have you here. And what I always do with my guests is I start with asking you what pronouns you use and how you identify.
Hi, yes. So I use pronouns she and her, and I identify as lesbian.
Thank you very much. And MindOut, your role at MindOut. I think you've been at MindOut for a while.
I have.
So yeah, what's your kind of journey? What kind of made you start in the first place working for them? And yeah, what do you do?
Yes. So MindOut used to sit within Mind in Brighton and Hove locally. And I was a senior manager at Mind in Brighton and Hove, but I was always really drawn towards the work of MindOut. So at one point they needed a group worker. So I used to run their open group, which is a group that we still run now. So that was back in about 2005 or 6.
Yeah.
So I delivered some of their group work, and then later on, probably around about 2012, I got invited to be the chair of the board of trustees. So I was chair for a little bit, which was really, really lovely and exciting. And then I think I might have done a bit of admin as well at some point. And then a new role of business development manager came up in 2017, which I leapt at, and I got that job. And that was just kind of like building on the fundraising aspect of our work. And then at this role, the deputy chief exec role came up, which I've now been doing since about April 2019. That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
So just over a year I've been the deputy chief exec.
Yeah.
So I absolutely love MindOut. It's a really sort of successful and functional and thriving organisation, and I've just really enjoyed the different roles I've had, and really enjoy contributing to such an amazing organisation.
Yeah. Maybe so how many years is that you've been there?
Well, on and off. It's been very on and off.
Okay.
So 2006.
Right.
So quite a long time.
Yeah.
But as a sort of like paid member of staff and doing these substantial roles, 2017. So 3 years.
Yeah. Okay. And it might be worth just sort of, for people that aren't familiar with MindOut, can you give us a sort of overview of the brilliant work that the organisation does?
I'll try and keep it brief, but basically,
It's a lot. It's a lot.
we're
Amazing.
the only organisation in the UK that solely works with LGBTQ mental health. And we've got a sort of a suite of services that have kind of been developed over the years based on what our users of our service tell us that they want. So we've got a really strong grassroots approach. All our services are sort of co-produced with the people that need to use our services. And this sort of suite of services acts as wraparound care for people. So we've got advocacy services, so that's around helping people understand their rights and what they're entitled to, and supports people in crisis. So often people come to us with housing issues, welfare benefits issues, urgent need to access mental health support, and all the sort of issues that might come with a crisis situation. And people get an advocate who works with them to help them understand what their options are, their choices are, and helps them resolve those crisis issues. So that's one big chunk of services. And we've also got a sort of a range of peer support services. So it kind of, when we started our work back in, 20 years ago now, isn't it? 25 years ago, I can remember.
You had our celebration.
Yeah, it was 20, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah, sorry, 20, yeah. It was really clear that many LGBTQ people with mental health issues were extremely sort of isolated and couldn't access the sort of the pubs and clubs and scene venues, often weren't really going out, were really isolated and needed opportunities to come together, safe LGBTQ specific spaces where they could come together, share experiences, talk about their mental health issues, get support from each other and build relationships. So we've got our group work service, we've got a peer mentoring service. So that's where we match a volunteer with a service user, and they'll sort of work together to look at doing something like going out, attending a group, maybe applying for a job, just going swimming, just building their sort of social networks. And that the peer, and then there's the peer support group. So that's a range of groups based on what service users tell us that they want. We've got our flagship suicide prevention groups called Out of the Blue. That's a really cornerstone of our services. And we'll talk about it a bit more, I know, about LGBTQ mental health. But suicidal distress is a huge issue for our communities. And we really needed to have a group that could address what is still quite a taboo subject, that firmly is about supporting people that experience suicidal distress. And that's a weekly group that I absolutely know has saved many lives over the years and will continue to. We also have a group called Work It Out, which is about people, which is for people who are juggling work and mental health issues, and a range of other identity themed, population themed groups, depending on the demand at the moment. We've just, not so long before lockdown, ran a relationships group. It's the first time we've done that. Supporting LGBTQ relationships. We've also got a counselling service, and we've got an online support service. So I could witter on for hours about all of those services. But it's very easy to access them. You can come in to MindOut and you can pick and choose from the menu of services that are available.
And they're all on the website, information on those different groups and stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, there's lots of information. On the website, you can download application forms, you can download application form for the counselling service, you can download a advocacy query form. You just need to ring us or email us if you want to access a group assessment.
Support lines and online chat support as well. It's all there, and I'll all of that in the show notes for this episode. I think one of the things you said there, is about literally saving lives, in terms of this work and the work that other, there's some great organizations out there supporting LGBTQ plus people, but this is what, it's about, reducing harm, minimizing harm to people in the LGBTQ community, and
absolutely,
life-saving services.
It's about highlighting the issues about mental health and well-being for LGBTQ communities. It's about increasing access to services, because we know that LGBTQ plus communities often are further away from services, often don't want to access mainstream services, and many of our users of our service come to us as a first port of call around their mental health. So they haven't even talked to their GPs about their mental health, or they haven't tried to access mainstream services. They've come to us because all of our staff are LGBTQ plus identified, and we understand some of those absolute basics. So they can land with us and feel safe.
That's a really, for me, it's something that I'm getting more and more passionate about, I guess, which is about what you're saying there about them not feeling able to access mainstream mental health services. And I think this goes for well-being more broadly as well, which is something I'm starting to really explore. But for today, I guess it'd be really interesting to hear your thoughts on what are the barriers, I guess. What are the reasons why the people that use MindOut services are coming to you for first port of call, and maybe they've been struggling for years, and not being able to reach out. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely, definitely. So there's a whole range of reasons, one of which is societal discrimination. So LGBTQ plus people who've got mental health problems have got the double whammy of having a mental health issue, and then the experience is quite hard to escape it if you grow up in this society knowing you're LGBTQ. Then you will have experienced on some level either microaggressions or full-blown sort of discrimination. So we're talking about homophobia, biphobia, and transphobia. And even if people haven't experienced sort of really sort of obvious discrimination and or hate crime, it's likely that they've experienced just ignorance, people not understanding their identities, not understanding that people have got different needs, different health needs, different needs in terms of accessing a whole range of services. So that sort of ignorance, and it's not a proactive discriminatory experience, but people are a lot of mainstream healthcare. Mainstream healthcare workers, for instance, are very ignorant often about LGBTQ lives and needs, and that just means we remain invisible. So there's an absolute vital, crucial need for a MindOut to exist, because we're in a way providing those services, which are the place where people need to land and get information and work out what they actually need to support them. So in a way, we're acting as a kind of mental health service that mainstream services should be providing, but can't. There was an interesting piece of research in 2017, the London Mayor's Assembly did a bit of research about why LGBTQ people don't access mainstream services, and often it's because mainstream services don't have the capacity to meet minority needs. That's not a good enough excuse, but it does go some way to explaining. So there's that aspect of discrimination and ignorance, and because of perhaps experiences of growing up difficulties around maybe bullying. It may be that people have experienced rejection from their family. They might have just had a hard time coming out to friends and family. And just because they're different, you know, they're different, seen as normal, those experiences become internalized. And then a lot of LGBTQ people experience this thing called minority stress, which is that, I'll give a bit of a flavour of that. It's that sort of internal experience of going into a new situation, scanning the room, wondering if anyone else there might be LGBTQ plus, wondering about whether or not they can come out, how safe is this situation, am I going to get any flack here, am I going to be understood? You know, it's all of that. It's constantly scanning, and it just adds extra dimension of stress to normal situations. That, going back to, you know, that whole thing you were saying about straight privilege, straight people don't ever have to think about coming out as straight. Straight people don't have to think about, oh, I'm going to have to say that I've got a wife. You know, it's all of those
yes, absolutely,
things that contribute to minority stress.
And that can also connect with our internalized homophobia, if that's something, you know, that we really struggle with. It's just all kind of feeds into that, doesn't it? And I think also when you were talking there about you know, the accessing those mainstream services and why that can be challenging, I think for me it's also represents a real, it almost feels dangerous. It feels like a real risk. We're going to walk into, you know, a space with a therapist, you know, and I'm sort of thinking broader well-being as well, with a therapist or massage, you know, you go for a massage, any of that stuff, even yoga classes and all of that, you know, this is where this is what I was saying earlier. This is where I'm being drawn to with my thinking at the moment. And it's like, it would, you know, it could be so damaging almost, and put you off ever going back or ever having that opportunity. And I think there's some real awareness raising generally for people.
It's about not making assumptions, isn't it? So if someone's coming to your yoga class, for instance, don't just assume they're heterosexual or cisgendered. You just absolutely can't tell by looking at somebody.
And understand, this is the education, if you like, if that's,
I mean, I don't know how many times I've been to a GP and they said, what
contraception do you use?
What contraception do you use?
That's one of them. I don't know if that's what you were going to say, but
it was exactly what I was going to say. I mean, I sort of, like you say, I've sort of got used to that, and that's like a bit of ignorance or just an assumption, which isn't offensive to me, but at the same time is just a bit like, and the other thing is on the parent. So the amount of sort of like, oh, so who's the dad in your relationship? And who, you know, me and my partner, I've had a few odd comments like that.
The dad in your relationship.
So who does the dad bit? It's just those are some of the things that I've experienced. But if you think about sort of trans communities and the sheer level of ignorance around the need that trans healthcare needs with the sort of healthcare professionals in the NHS, it's really shocking how much ignorance there is and lack of understanding, and it just makes people have real difficulties accessing the crucial healthcare that they need.
And I think we're sort of moving into, you know, the reasons why mental health challenges and struggles are so much greater for, you know, LGBTQ plus people. And I think the statistics, and how accurate they are, who knows, but the ones that I'm familiar with it's about, you know, twice as high in terms of the struggles and the you know, surveys that have been done by organisations like Mind, I think, and Stonewall and stuff like that. Is that right? It's about that what you...
Well, the sort of received wisdom is that 25% of the mainstream population experience a mental health problem at any one point in time, and that's probably a bit of an underestimation. And the comparable, it is much higher in LGBTQ populations. It's around about 40%. That's the sort of statistics that we're working with at the moment. But again, the sort of body of evidence, there's a lot of money and research going into looking at LGBTQ mental health at the moment. So they haven't sort of revised that up recently, but around 40%. Which is a lot higher than 25%, obviously.
And these are the people, and I guess it works whether it's sort of mainstream.
LGBTQ communities, there are lots of variants as well. So, for instance, you know, bi women have worse
they do,
mental health experiences than lesbian women or gay women. And we know trans communities have high levels of, you know, suicidal distress, high levels of poor mental health, and often that is greatly improved once trans people get access to the healthcare that they need, and the you know, basically the healthcare pathways, the gender clinics and access to hormones and all the rest of the stuff that people need to.
So in terms of why they're so much higher,
we sort of touched on it a bit, didn't we?
Yeah, we have touched.
Sorry, you're about to say something.
Yeah, we have touched on it a bit. I was just thinking about what you're saying there, which is like you can treat it as a collective, I suppose, but then actually it's quite nuanced in the different communities within the umbrella of LGBTQ+, isn't there? So I have a podcast episode that I did with Isla McLaughlin, who's another coach, another queer coach. She's bisexual, and we talked about, you know, that whole the real sort of, it's real struggles of bisexual people because of the fact that and I don't think this only applies to bisexual people, but the amount of discrimination and prejudice within the LGBTQ+ community towards bisexual people.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it's not, you know, that's not necessarily only happens for that part of our community. I think it exists elsewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look at the dating
we
apps.
all love each other, and we all, you know, we all sort of feel, but sadly, it's so, it breaks my heart a bit that
I know. There's so much ageism. There's so much racism. There's often not the right sort of amount of acceptance of lots of different groups. We have to get our own house, you know, we do have to get our own house in order, and as well, I suppose in a way it's like whatever's reflected in our communities is whatever's going on outside. And
yeah, that's interesting. Even within like the lesbian community,
you
know, so things like, and I was, you know, as I've started to work more and more in this space personally with my business, you know, and people talk to me about how they really have real experiences of like things like not being gold star lesbians and things like that. And I'm like, really, that goes on? But you just feel they're not gay enough. They're not gay enough to belong, and they're in gay spaces and all this sort of stuff. And I think bisexual people have that kind of thing too, in almost like you're not gay enough to be in the gay club or whatever it is space.
And that's partly one of the driving forces is setting MindOut up is that it's a safe space for everybody,
Yeah.
and we work really hard to be inclusive, because this is all about inclusion. This is all about whether or not you're in the in group or the out group, whether you're accepted or not, what does society make of LGBTQ groups, people, lives, and there's so much work to do,
Yeah, so much
in
work.
mainstream society. And again, that's just our communities are kind of a microcosm. We can't really be, we want to be this beacon of good practice, and there's lots of amazing activism going on, but still there's prejudiced, discriminatory attitudes that we embody and that we've, internalized, like I said earlier, and we have to just become a lot more conscious of what's happening.
Yeah.
So like something like for instance, Black Lives Matter,
Yeah.
has made all of us sit up, take notice, confront our own our own racism
Absolutely.
as white people, and we need to do the same thing around all our sort of internalized prejudices and our behaviours.
Yeah.
Sort of feel like I've gone off the point a bit now, but
No, I think
I think
it's
we're talking
really
about,
valid, though. I think it's really
yeah,
important that, anyone listening, whether they're gay, bi, queer themselves or an ally, to be reminded that we're not just one, we're not just one big happy family in the
no,
LGBTQ+ community. We have our own work to do, it's
yeah,
get our own house in order.
yeah,
And in many ways, I like what you said about how it is almost a reflection. We've got our own version
yeah,
of it. It's just so not to be disillusioned by that.
no.
And
And
that's why,
you've got to think about how there's still loads of work for us to do at MindOut, in the sense of, fundamentally, people are alone and feel alone with their mental health. So we all have mental health. We're all, on a spectrum with our mental health.
yeah,
And what I always find is that people feel so alone with their thoughts and feelings. They fundamentally feel like they are wrong, like their thoughts and feelings and their behaviours are because they are fundamentally wrong. And they forget, or they just don't realise, or it's really hard to connect with others to know that everybody else also has an inner life and an experience of mental health, and they too feel alone with that. It's that thing where you think you're highly critical of yourself, and we need to practice a lot more self-compassion. And for LGBTQ people, it's even worse, because society has said you're not right.
yeah,
You're not right because your sexual identity or gender identity isn't mainstream.
yeah,
So something fundamental about you isn't right. So
yeah,
that's our baseline.
yeah.
And that's
That's the
what we
start
have to
point.
undo. That's why MindOut exists. That's why we still need these LGBTQ specific spaces. You often hear arguments, oh, why don't we, it's all homogenous now, everybody, we can all use the same services, there's a lot more acceptance. And there has been huge strides around legislation and rights, the Equality Act, equal marriage, all of that sort of stuff. But still,
The changes in legislation don't change attitudes and hearts and
no,
minds and all of that stuff, do they? That takes a lot longer.
yeah.
Change a law doesn't
But I
mean,
think you'll also find that attitudes have really shifted. Attitudes even 10 years ago are much more accepting generally in this sort of
yeah,
esoteric way out there, but actually still the daily existence of LGBTQ people and their experience of mental health is really poor. And suicidal distress it's just unconscionable that there's such high levels of suicidal distress, and we still need these safe LGBTQ plus spaces for
yeah.
people to explore that, for people to build on their resilience, create those networks and friendships and relationships, and not feel so isolated and alone.
Where are the spaces? Because that was something when you mentioned it earlier, it sort of popped into my head as well, which was about, because bars and clubs are not safe spaces, I don't
No,
feel,
definitely not.
for us. And MindOut provides that space. Where, because people have asked me this too, where can you go that is safe?
Like a sort of social space.
Yeah. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, there are things like meetup groups,
Yeah,
in Brighton we've got Blags,
yeah,
the sports society specifically. And I think that I was a member for a while and I felt that was quite safe,
yeah.
compared to bars and clubs. But yeah, I think there's a distinct lack of.
Yeah, no, there is. I mean, there's kind of hobby groups, aren't there? And there's lots of interesting Facebook groups and stuff. There's a whole kind of online world of support.
Yeah,
But I was just also thinking, like with COVID-19, there's people haven't been going out to pubs and clubs as much as well.
yeah.
So we know, I mean, the
How's that? Tell me a bit about
LGBT
that.
Foundation.
Tell me a bit about what you've seen with COVID-19 going on in terms of the
It's not
impact.
great, I'm afraid. I mean, increased levels of distress, increased levels of anxiety and depression, more isolation, LGBTQ people who have certainly during lockdown had to return and live back at home or in unsafe
Yeah,
sort of living situations. It might be family, it might be, maybe people have had to go back in the closet or sort of hide their identities. Certainly sort of younger people and students who just gone out to university have had to return home. Unsafe situations, there's been increased, domestic abuse, emotional abuse. People are under threat of, higher threat of violence, and especially trans people. Um, I think, I mean, I don't want to make sweeping conclusions about everyone's mental health, but I certainly have experienced personally a bit of people around me unraveling a bit more, and us really having to work quite hard to maintain our own mental health and trying to get that balance.
yeah,
Need to talk about things more, and being able to actually acknowledge and say what we've been going through, I think, and dealing with those, it's kind of makes people feel very ashamed. It brings out some of those really sort of basic emotions, shame and, oh, I'm not coping, and I'm useless, I'm depressed. It's really hard to face up to that and talk about it. And that's why we need those spaces to do that. So our groups, our online support service, there's different degrees. Some of our services sort of allow people to talk and share their experiences. Others are there for people when they're in crisis or in suicidal distress. Yeah, there's been a big fallout from COVID-19, and we're going to see that continue because there's also this massive sense of uncertainty. I think that's one of the biggest things that people have to deal with.
yeah.
See people get, members of our staff have become unwell. There's higher levels of stress. People come, I did a piece with Ben Hunt, who's the BBC.
Yeah, I saw.
Yeah, really great piece that he was doing about the rise in suicidal distress over lockdown.
Have you got the full like clip or full
Yeah, I
summary?
think it's on the website. You can also, if
Okay.
you go onto the BBC News website, you can Google it
Yeah, okay.
and it will come up. I can send you the link. You can put in the
Perfect.
notes.
Perfect.
Yeah, I think he just did a piece. He was pretty shocked about the fact that coroners don't record the identity, if known, the LGBTQ identity of people that actually do take their own lives. So we don't know how many people die from suicide. So it's a big issue. There's, you know, I think the suicide rates, it's a bit early because the way suicide sort of stats are collated, it's always in retrospect. So it's a bit early to say that there's been a rise, but we know that levels of distress have gone up. People are saying that they feel suicide has gone up, and we are imagining and predicting that more people may have taken their lives during lockdown and as a result of COVID-19. People, you know, haven't been able to access their normal supports.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, their normal support. And like you say, if they're having to be almost like forced back into perhaps living arrangements or with people that you know, just don't support them and aren't supportive of who they are, then you've got all of that extra and that uncertainty and that kind of like, well, when's this going to end? Because none of us know that either. And how much longer can I keep going with this? I guess is all of that stuff that's really weighing really heavily. And I think one of the things that you said earlier, and you said it again just now, which I wanted to just pick up on, was about this being able to talk openly and be, you know, honest about where you're at and how you're feeling and be vulnerable with that. And that sort of almost like that sense that we might fall into the trap of, I suppose, in a way, of that other people seem like they're doing all right and we're the one that's like unraveling or it's all falling apart. And actually the truth is that everybody is feeling it. Everybody isn't doing okay. You know, we're just good at, you know, I think most of us, we're good at holding it all together, you know, and the power and the, you know, the kind of opportunity for compassion and connection and support by being able to be human and be ourselves, you know, be truthful and honest about where we're at. And we need, you know, it's almost like we need to be able to access that, I think, more to support ourselves and others, you know, by how, and it's almost like the word that's in my mind is gift, which almost doesn't go with the kind of the real sadness and grief and loss around the things that we're talking about, but in there that there is a gift of being able to be vulnerable and being able to be human and being able to share your sadness and fear and all of those things. It's really hard to talk about.
And I think there's different degrees, aren't there? So
yeah,
that vulnerability sometimes can feel so intense and excruciating that it is a major effort to talk about some of those feelings. When it's not so intense, you can get a lot of, you can start listening to others, offering your insights, sharing that vulnerability and feeling sort of secure and getting some real healing and support and help from other people in that sharing. So there's that kind of exchange and sharing experiences and feeling, you know, supported by that. But there's also that on a very basic level, the act of talking about something brings into visibility what has been invisible. And this is part of the problem around minority stress and the issues with LGBTQ mental health, that people have been invisible and their experiences are poorly understood. And that leads to exclusion. So it's a very basic fundamental thing. You feel excluded, you become very lonely and isolated with no way back into mainstream sort of thing. So to me, there's something really important about that. Speak it, create the language, create the experience, then you exist. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And a lot of people are battling on a regular basis with almost their existence, you know, do they want this existence anymore? So going back to the suicidal distress, so existence can be quite a thing that people struggle with, even to just be there, you know.
Yeah, what that's making me think about as well is the process of, I think it was when you said about it being so intense and almost like what that meant, you know, what made me feel was it's almost must be really like almost impossible or really challenging to even verbalize it, to even understand it. And you know, once we are able to express and understand and kind of process it through that process, because part of that speaking it out is starting to heal, isn't it?
Yes.
And starting to let it go, I suppose, in a way.
Makes sense. I mean, people,
yeah,
so important to make some meaning out of these different experiences and own them, you know, and then you can take action from that point. You can make choices. Once you've got, it's almost like creating a bit of a narrative, a story about who you are and why those things happen and why you have those feelings and thoughts and how you can move out of them, I suppose. Even if it's a cyclical thing, because mental health is cyclical. It's not just a linear journey to recovery and then you're fine. Things come back, don't they? Sometimes I think, I can't believe I still have issues with food sometimes. I can't believe I still feel a bit shit about my parent, you know, well, you know, how my mum was with me when I was younger and what it was like when I came out. And I'm, you know, 50. I'm in my early 50s now. And sometimes those things are still there. But that's okay as well, because you've built it narrative. You think, I know I do understand that. I do have ways of coping with this. You know, and I think it's important that those of us who are who are used to speaking out about it can also acknowledge that we feel inarticulate at times, and that what we're trying to do, like at MindOut, is give people those spaces to start talking about it themselves, and we can help facilitate that and say it's okay, we've been there, we've absolutely been there, we've got our own mental health struggles.
Yeah, I agree with all that you said there. And that's cyclical. It's not like you kind of have, you know, talk it out, speak it out once and you're kind of done kind of thing. You carry it's like it's you know, it's that kind of peeling away the layers of the onion analogy, I think, for me. And I certainly would agree, being a woman in her 50s, and you know, by the work that I do, this work that I'm doing now, and you know, really stepping into my sexuality, you know, part of that was being a board trustee for MindOut. You know, part of that choice that I made was because I was ready, I suppose, to really step into being a gay woman and feeling proud of it, and doing my own healing work, you know, plus, you know, contributing to the amazing work that the charity does. And yeah, you know, my own internalized homophobia, I wouldn't say it's all healed. I'm on that process of healing that, and part of that is recognizing, you know, that there's still things, and forgiveness and forgiving myself and loving myself and being compassionate and accepting, you know, for what I am. But it doesn't mean that, you know, if my mum, for example, you know, when she said, well, I don't know why gay people need equal marriage. I've got civil partnership. Isn't that enough? You know, I'm like, oh, what? You know?
Yeah, I know.
Things like that, you know, they'd still hurt.
Yeah, it's like little even little microaggressions like that, it does hurt us, but we're so sort of used to it. But at the same time, it's like, you've got to remember that as much as you are used to it and you just sort of take it on the chin, there's still not enough examples out there. There's still not enough role models. There's still not enough LGBTQ people to relate to. I don't even not even talk about celebrities and stuff. I just mean that visibility issue on telly. I mean, there's a growing body of culture and specific, and the need for it. So I know there's this great kind of LGBTQ sports podcast, which I'd not, that's another thing, isn't it? LGBTQ people are not seen as sporty. I mean, I suppose are lesbians, though, definitely, but a certain kind of lesbian only. Do you know what I mean? It's not necessarily
the sporty type.
Yeah, exactly.
Stereotype, one of the stereotypes, isn't it? Yeah.
You've only got to look at football. We're delivering some training for one of the sort of football associations, not the FA actually, another one, but I won't say what the actual name of it is. And I was just chatting to the guy that's commissioning the training, and we were just talking about the fact that there's still no out footballers in the Premier League. So anyway, I'm going on to sports now.
No, it's relevant, and I think the role model thing, I think, is really, really a key point in terms of, maybe this is the sorts of things that if you are LGBTQ and you're listening, and it's about, which I do talk about, it's about standing for what you believe in, standing and having that voice for the people that can't speak up. It's not safe for them to be out. It's not safe for them to be fully who they are because of the way the world is. It's dangerous. And if we're in that position where we can, like when my mum says stuff like that, no, she's just talking about my mum, but sorry, mum. People, conversations that I have with friends of mine that I've had for a really long time, straight friends, starting to not just let that go, but actually, have the conversation with them about their straight privilege, have the conversation, when you're in environments, where maybe it's not inclusive, and
I think just basically, and also just basically reminding people that you only have to look at what is happening right now. You only have to just do a very cursory Google, and you will see quite a lot of transphobia.
You don't even need to Google it, do you? Just look.
No, you don't. It's just there. I mean, we're breathing it in. It's just there in the ether. Government policy, recent legislation where amendments to the Gender Recognition Act have been binned. A sort of, always this threat of some of those rights being rolled back. It's not.
Poland.
We can't just stick a flag in the sand to say we've got there. We've made it to the moon and now it's all fine. These rights are eroded all the time, and hate crime has increased with the sort of, weird libertarian policies of our current government. I'm not just blaming, I'm not just saying it's all to do with the Tories, but it's not safe. It is not safe yet. It's not like we've achieved nirvana not by a long shot.
No. And conversion therapy, that's the other thing. That is shocking, that's not. I mean, I wrote to our local MP, what's his name? Forgotten his bloody name, Peter Kyle. And he wrote me back a great, great letter. But what's being done, nothing being done. The fact that that's still legal in this country, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah, yeah, that issue's really been highlighted, hasn't it, by the sort of Equalities Office. It's been really investigated and looked at, and some of the sort of stark facts about it. And yes, it's still
they're
happening.
still considering what to do about it. I mean, what do you need to consider?
I know. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty scary. And then
It is.
The other thing, it's not, if you look outside the UK, to countries like Poland, for example, where they've just re-elected an anti-LGBTQ president, and they've got places in Poland where no gay people.
I know, LGBTQ free zones. I know.
Just, and if that's happening, it's not very far away, is it?
No, exactly.
So yeah, it's.
I mean, it's just going back to that point about we absolutely do, all of us really have to stand up, and it's an absolute plea to all our allies out there to stand alongside, because it's everybody's responsibility. There's the stats really are shocking in a modern, rich Western country. That those levels of mental health statistics, the high levels of mental health issues, difficulties. It shouldn't be like that. And, we still have to stand up and talk about mental health. We still have to sort of bang home these messages about those health inequalities. Basically, that's what it is, structural health inequalities and other inequalities. But mental health is our bread and butter. So that's what I always end up talking about. There's a lot of work needed to redress that, and it's not just financial, it's awareness, it's people not standing for it anymore.
And we all individually have the power to contribute to that.
And you've got to think and become aware of what is happening here. It is like a societal psychological process where people are saying, for instance, all the transphobia are going, there's a moral panic. Oh, we can't, we need to sort of stop this. It's not right. Young trans children changing their gender, blah, blah, blah. They're too young to make those decisions. All of this sort of stuff is just about rolling back rights and fear and ignorance about a very, very, a small community who's massively under pressure and whose mental health is, and who don't enjoy the same rights as other groups in society.
And it's all of that fear is based on ignorance,
naked oppression,
incorrect information, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Don't even know what the information and the assumptions that they're making are just inaccurate and wrong.
Yeah. And it's a bit of a vicious, oppressive behavior, ways of treating other people, which we need to be aware of and stop in ourselves. Everybody has some responsibility for this. We all live in that society, and we all have to do our little bit to stop it. To turn that tide of discrimination.
Definitely. Thank you. So I'm gonna wrap this up with a couple of questions for you. And the first one is to ask you what you enjoy most about the work that you do.
Well, because I've moved into a sort of internal sort of deputy exec role. That's all about making the organisation successful and efficient, and make sure the staff are okay, and all of our internal systems. Sounds a bit boring, but what I really enjoy is making the organisation successful, because then we can deliver the work and reach new groups, you know, reach people that need us, that aren't already using us. And I think I really enjoy the training aspect. So I've been managing our training. So we deliver training to groups, to organisations, from, you know, third sector to corporates. We run 2 packages, our Trans 101 awareness package and our A to Z of inclusion package. So we run, people can sort of book on to the public facing events that we run, and then other people can commission us. And I really enjoy that, because that's where we're really getting into helping groups and individuals become more inclusive and really spreading that word of this is what our communities need. Getting people, it's just great to see people really learning and enjoying it, thinking, oh my God, I had no idea that it was so bad, and getting people to make pledges about what they're going to improve and how they're going to be more inclusive. So I really enjoy that aspect.
Can anyone go on those programs?
Yes,
Like, it doesn't have to be from an organisation particularly.
Anybody can go on, and they're very affordable.
That's a bit of a
bit of a plug.
Well, yes, you know, we're talking about, you know, actually stepping up and
get educated,
doing something to like have an impact, make a change, you know.
And we keep it a really safe space, because people get really anxious about it, anxious about making a mistake, getting the language wrong, really anxious about making a fool of themselves. And it's not about that. It's about learning, expanding your own awareness and consciousness, expanding your access to language, using that language and improving it for the people that you're then going to be working with or coming into contact with.
Do you have a mix of heterosexual and LGBTQ plus people, or more?
Absolute mix. You know, our target audience really would be, well, it's not just cisgender heterosexual society. Actually, it is everybody, because I think I mean, I don't know all the language, you know. There's a proliferation of rich new language and new identities that are coming out all the time as people feel empowered to sort of speak their truth about who they are, and that's really positive.
Good. Okay.
We've all got to get with the program.
We've all got to get with the program. I like it. Absolutely, Kate. So that's what you love. Who are your inspirations?
I found that a bit tricky.
This is like the last question.
I know. I do find that a bit tricky. I think I'm a little bit.
Do you not like
that? You know, just naming kind of celebrities or something. I don't.
Celebrities could be like.
Well, I would say some of my friends. Like some of my really close friends absolutely inspire my inspiration. So like sort of older lesbians actually that I've known in my time, because they have been the only role models that I've ever had. I've always felt a little bit like I don't have that many role models. I don't think there was any obvious really brilliant lesbians out there doing stuff. And they've always been my role models. Pardon?
I missed that bit. Say that again.
I was just saying that some older lesbians that have mentored me actually, and that I've worked with in the past, I felt really inspired by them, and I think it was just like a bit anchored by them, like, okay, so I can, you know, have a prominent position, I can be a manager, I can be, you know, doing, because they've walked that ground before me, I suppose. Like the Greenham women, you know, all of that. I've got some friends that went to Greenham. Sadly, I never did, but just people who are true to them, you know, people that are true to themselves. I always try to be myself with people, because I think that's what they want to see. If they're inspired by you being yourself and being open and honest, and also who are good listeners. Oh my gosh, that's quite rare. People that really do listen and help you sort of frame what you're saying. So I haven't come up with a particular name there, but I hope that's
good.
That is what I truly find inspiring.
Yeah. And I'm sure that you're now doing that for women yourself.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah.
I really try to do that, have that mentoring role, because I really got a lot out of being mentored.
Yeah.
And I think it's really great to see the potential in someone and tell them, you have got this potential. This is what I see in you. This is how I think I can help you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Because they have, you know, I believe we've all got these sort of gifts and talents, you know, within us. And sometimes, you know, there'll be all sorts of reasons, but sometimes things like our sexual orientation or our gender identity and the struggles we have with that mean that we're not expressing. When we're hiding parts of us or afraid of parts of ourselves and other, you know, all our creativity, I think, gets kind of stuck in there too. So yeah,
absolutely.
Helping people to be all that they are is really inspiring in itself. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
So people can get in touch with you if they want to. I'm making that assumption. If they want to contact you at MindOut,
contact me directly.
Yeah.
Or if you want more information about MindOut and you want to email us about using one of our services or accessing training, whatever, it's the info@mindout.org.uk
email address.
And our online service is open every day. If you just Google, if you just get onto our website, you'll see the opening times on the homepage.
Yeah. Okay. I'll put the links in the show notes as well. Thank you so much.
You don't have to be, it's easy to access. You don't have to be referred by anyone else. Just get in touch and we will be there to help.
Yeah. I know you've made it as easy as possible for people to access the services and confidentially as well. So wonderful.
And from other places, because we can do some of our service via Zoom. So
when you say other places, you mean like outside the UK as well, or
I think we've had some people accessing training from New York and stuff, which was very exciting. But people can potentially access our groups from outside of Brighton and Hove and Sussex.
Right. Okay. Cool.
And obviously anyone with a computer can access the online service. Yeah.
Brilliant. All right. Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
See you soon and all of those things.